Hello everyone. I'm in the process of needing to repot this orchid, and I've also been seeing a lot of videos with people's orchids and terrestrial plants that are overpotted. Now, I want to talk about why this is so important and why we need to make sure that we have the right size pot for our orchid. The first thing is that if you overpot your orchid, and that just means using a pot that is too big, that's what overpotting means. There are going to be some terms in here that may be new to some of you. The first reason is that the mix will stay wet too long, and this will prevent air from getting into the roots. And since most orchids are epiphytes, they need a lot of air movement to the roots. Air exchange, I mean. Another reason is that if you've got pests, little bugs, they can get into way bigger populations before you notice that they're there. So you could get like a huge pest outbreak in your grow area, and whereas if you had a little pot and there were pests in there, they wouldn't get to such high numbers. And the last reason is that it's just a waste of money. You'll use way more mix than you'll need. Beginners may think that it would be good to have a little plant in a great big pot so that they won't have to repot as often, but that's counterproductive for the reasons that I mentioned before. Also, if your mix is staying wet too long, it's going to break down faster and you're going to actually have to repot more often. So, the general rule for choosing a pot size for sympodial orchids, these are ones that grow a new growth to the side each year or multiples a year. How do we know? Well, there's a couple things you want to look at. The general rule is to have a pot that's going to allow for 1 to 2 years root growth or top growth. And the other rule is to choose a pot that is just big enough to contain the root ball. However, this root ball, as you can see, is smaller than the top growth. So, the first thing, I'm so sorry, I'm a little confused and my dog wants in, but if she comes in, she's going to be all noisy and begging for treats. So, how do we know what 1 to 2 years growth is going to be on this orchid? As you can see, this orchid is growing. It's got a new growth here, it's got a new growth here, it's got a new growth over here, and it's growing them from all around. So this can potentially get quite a bit bigger in 1 to 2 years. However, this one is stunted, and the new growths that are coming out are little. Like, let me find it. This one here, this is really tiny compared to this is how big they should be. So it's going to take a little bit of time for them to get back to full growth. This has been stunted because of insect damage, and this is not my fault, by the way. Not my orchid originally. So what I'm going to do, okay, wait. This was in about a 2.5, 3-inch pot. If I went up to the next pot size, just one pot size up, you can see I don't have room for the top growth. The roots are going to grow outside the pot, and also I've got quite a bit of space in there, and that would, I don't know, I think that would just be kind of a lot too much mix. If I go way up to where it should be to give me enough growth, or room for growth, then I would have a huge amount of space in here for the root ball. Alright, hang on. Let me get my dog. Come on, baby. So, the other thing that most people don't talk about is the shape of the pot. Now, this was in a pretty straight pot, straight up and down. So, I don't know, so it seems like, I don't know, this is just not going to work. Like, I'm going to have way too much mix in there and not enough room for top growth. So I have chosen a pot with angled sides, this clay pot. So, when I take this, like this is, the root ball is going to just fit, the base of the root ball is just going to fit in the bottom of the pot. That's just about the same size. But then when I put it in here, I'm going to have room for the new growths to come out. And with this particular one, I'm just potting it up. I'm not actually repotting and putting in all fresh mix. That will be a separate video about why that is. But I have some other examples that would be different when you're choosing a different pot. Like, right, stop, please. Okay, this is a Cattleya Skinneri. Skinneri? Heidi Jacobs. This plant has a huge amount of spaces between the growths. It's got a really long rhizome between the growths. Alright, I'm going to have to come back and do a part 2. Sorry about that, you guys. I gotta take care of the dog.